Welcome back. It's another Unapologetic with Eric King on WOVU 95.9 FM. This is the radio station and a show where we explore wealth far beyond your bank account because real success is rooted in healing, connection, and truth telling. I'm your host, Eric King, and today is our Brother to Brother segment. And that Brother to Brother segment is 100% about us men. And today's topic is, definitely not out of the realm of men. So let's jump into it. So, what if what's stopping you in the bedroom isn't your body, but your voice? Millions of men believe they're battling with erectile dysfunction, but studies show only 19% of men diagnosed with ED have a biological cause. The rest, often emotional or psychological. That means a lot of men aren't broken, they're just silent. So today, we're breaking down some of the silence. We're breaking down, we're coming in a way to where we're going to talk about why so many men are struggling, not with sex, but with asking for the sex they actually want. So this comes from a book that I've referenced on many occasions during this show called, for those that are, watching online, it's called No More Mr. Nice Guy, a proven plan for getting what you want in love, sex, and life. And so a lot of in this book, the book talks about what it means for men to literally ask for what they want, for men to ask for what they want and also to ask for what they need, not necessarily in the bedroom, so to speak, but from the standpoint of what we can have as a level of fulfillment. So social norms say just perform. Childhood taught us don't cry. Culture shames us for wanting too much or wanting something tender. And in the space, men stop speaking altogether. Now, women are often taught to pay attention to men's silence and their nonverbal, but how many women have actually been taught the language of men and also allow men to actually emote in a way in a safe, journey? Right? Because right now, I guess the terminology is simp. If you are connected with your emotions, you're a simp. If you're a person that talks about your emotions, you're a simp. But it's perfectly okay for us men to utilize our words to get you in the bedroom. And then once we get you in the bedroom, if we begin to ask you for what we need and what type of intimacy we need, we often get shut down or we go ahead and get tagged as whatever, whatever comes. So the anxiety of performing and the anxiety of being connected isn't actually something that is talked about. And so today we're going to go ahead and break the silence and we're going to disconnect from whatever form of dissatisfaction that breeds within us. So last week I began to do some shadow work, and that shadow work was around No More Mr. Nice Guy. And many people know this book, like I said, for the, the people pleasing. If you read this book provides you the opportunity and do the actual activities. It allows you to get more in touch with your shadow side. So today I'm gonna wear three hats. I got my Eric hat, I got my therapist hat, and I got my host hat. So right now I'm gonna put on my therapist hat. When you do shadow work, that is your opportunity to dig deep within the things that you often hide from other individuals. And so when you do shadow work, that brings, if you're doing it correctly and you're doing it consistently, it is going to bring up some of more of the dark things that you have put, to the back burner. And for men, a lot of that has to do with sexual desires, and it has to do with what us as men are requiring of others to meet our needs. Now, when we say needs, we're talking about, it's not about positions, it's not about, whatever you see on Instagram. This is us talking about how do we talk to our partners about how we feel and what brings us closer to you. This is literally about communing for the sole purpose of building intimacy that sparks way far beyond an ejaculation or any form of penetration. So we're gonna get a little deep, but we also gonna have some fun. I would like to bring on my dude Ivra, and just before we jump off into our midday break, just to see what you got going on. Then we're gonna later on we got Charles that's gonna come in and he gonna join us, and he's a budding mental health professional as well as a black male. What you got going on, Ivra?
So as I listened to the monologue here, it just struck me that there is a great amount of irony in what you were talking about, and that we have to use our words to get so far,
right?
But then our words stop.
They stop, and they're expected to stop, right? Because if you sit down and you discuss this idea of intimacy or sexual intimacy with your partner, at times it can be overwhelming for them, because guess what, they're not taught the language in the same way that we're not taught the language. So we're in the United States, and we all know that sex is taboo, and it's so taboo that it is creating a culture of side pieces and cheating and all this nature, all this stuff, to have simply to have a pleasurable experience. And in most cases, the pleasurable experience is focused towards the woman, so that the woman can provide us with a, hate to say it, some form of an ego stroke or ego growth.
But and that goes both ways.
It does go both ways.
It's kind of interesting too that you said American culture. So there is a subculture of deviance that sometimes it makes you wonder, how could we, in a legal and healthy manner, how can we help those brothers and sisters out there who struggle and end up causing harm to either young people or whatever the case may be. But it's kind of in line with when there was prohibition on alcohol,
right,
and prohibition on marijuana, or whatever the case. It's very similar to the desires of people, and they're being good or bad, legal or illegal. It's very interesting.
Yeah, if I go back to the book, so in the book, Dr. Green talks about the origins of the nice guy, and what he says in the book is, around World War II, where all the men left, right, the women wanted their men to actually be accepted by other women in order to propagate their existence, right? And so if the men are not around raising these individuals, then who's there to raise them? And so in most cases, it was the mom raising, or the aunties or grandmoms, right? And they wanted their offspring or their male to be accepted, right? We didn't want a dirty male. We didn't want a raunchy male. We didn't want someone that someone's young daughter, didn't want. And so in the book, he shows how during the World War II that we were socialized in a way to be nice guys. In other words, another way of saying that is people pleasing. And a part of that people pleasing is asking for the type of sexual intimacy you need. And if it's something outside the bounds of regular, quote unquote, normal, then in most cases you were shut down.
Yeah.
And so in the book, what he's literally saying is, we're languishing in this part as men, and our act of side chicks and all this other stuff is a byproduct of all that. Because in reality, what are we told that sex is, other than a pleasurable instance that lasts for XYZ time, and we're focused on the ejaculation, or that part of the culmination, and we're working towards that
ending versus the experience.
Right.
And I think too, can't forget that our mothers and the women that raised us in those instances were doing what they thought was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Even though the results weren't there.
It's all about intentions. And this is not a demonization of anyone.
Right.
And it's definitely not a demonization of women. We're focused on men unlocking their inner voice in a way, just like the book says, to have a better life, to have a better love, and to have, the best pleasurable, intimacy with their partner that they're needed. Now, this is the other thing that has come up in sessions when I've talked about this. When men dive into this book and they go through the activities, they often come back to me with a high level of anxiety and sadness because they believe that their relationship, because it started differently, they believe that their relationship should end or needs to end in order for them to be the type of person that they need to be. So, in other words, when we interact with someone, we train them on how to treat us. And by training them on how to treat us, we also train them on how to love us. And so if we go and we say, okay, I know that this makes you feel comfortable, and I know that you've been doing this, but let me be real. This was only happening because you got pleasure from it. I got 2% of pleasure, and I knew that it gave you pleasure. And so I just acquiesced and went forward with it.
And I think there's an element of enjoyment in
Mm-hmm.
seeing
Mutual enjoyment.
Yeah, mutual enjoyment. But I think for me, there's enjoyment in seeing my wife
Right.
in that, in the middle of
Right.
whatever. And I do not believe that we should be ashamed of teaching,
Yeah,
and growing together as a couple.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that as a guy, as a man, I think we have to come to terms with. We are on this journey together.
Yeah. And we're on this journey together, and we need to have more male groups. We're doing a great job in this day and age of having more male groups. We just need to do a little bit better. And we're going to spend this time today. So we are going to step out on our break, and we're going to have our midday mix on this. What is this? Cloudy day?
Cloudy.
Let's get up and move a bit.
Day.
We know that all emotions are connected to music, and music is a way of flowing. So let me see you flow. Let's take this mix, and we're gonna come back on the other side. Welcome back. Unapologetic on WOVU 95.9 FM. We're doing big things on in Garden Valley. So hopefully everyone gets the chance to participate in all that we got going on in Garden Valley at WOVU, and all the spectacular things that are within our community. All right, so I'm gonna bring in everybody. So let me go ahead and reintroduce everybody. I am Eric King, the host of Unapologetic. We got my man Ivra. He's over there.
Good afternoon.
There you go.
Good morning, good afternoon, good night.
And welcoming us is a budding mental health provider, Charles Terry.
Hello.
All right. What I'm gonna need you to do is come up to the mic.
Come up to the mic.
There you go. All right. So as you can hear, we're all men in this studio, and so let's just hit it. So most men don't need the little blue pill; they need the language to ask for what they want. In 2024, men spent nearly $3 billion on ED meds. But here's the truth: 81% of those cases wasn't biological. They were emotional, psychological, and cultural. And so that is the silence that we go through, or the cost of our silence. You take a rhino pill, which is purely for performance, at ED. You take a blue pill, which is purely for performance. That there is a cost to that. So as a therapist, let's just be real. If you were to have therapy with those individuals, right, for 6 months, it would cost you, that $3 billion would be able to cover therapy for 6 months for 245,000 men who don't need to worry about performance, but really need to learn the language. So my question for today is, what would change in your life if you could say what you really want? And so that's where we're going to start. So let's start with, I'm going to bust out this key phrase. And if anyone is watching online, you can see the key phrase. Key phrase, or the key term, is sexual self-silence. It is the practice of denying or hiding sexual wants due to fears of rejection. So, Ivra, 1 in 5 men suffer from ED. 1 of 5. Now, if you watch any commercials that we've had, you would think every male over the age of 40 needs to have testosterone shots or some form of ED, or even needs some high T, low T supplement. When you hear, some of these ads that are out, and I'm within that age range. Charles, how old are
sir.
you?
44.
44. So
Lord
we're all,
willing this year.
right.
I like to cheat on my age a little bit.
Right.
43.
So we are all in the realm or all around the same age that these commercials, these erectile dysfunctional commercials are aimed towards.
Yes.
So I'm going to start with Ivra first. 1 of 5 men suffer from physical ED. We're not talking about psychological ED. What's your thoughts on that?
So that's 20% of the folks walking around, 20% of the dudes walking around.
Right.
I
That's that
think it's-
19%.
Yeah, I think knowing our society, I think when you look at most things on television, when you look at most pharmaceutical commercials and
Mhm.
advertisements, I think one of the things that you have to keep in mind is that in all likelihood, there's a better way of approaching it
Yeah.
than a synthetic.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times our culture drives the quick fix,
Mhm.
the microwave society,
Yeah.
instead of doing the work. And I think most people would rather just have the quick fix
Yeah. It's the 5
actually-
things versus one thing.
than actually do the work and go about finding the symptom
Yeah.
and finding the root cause of the problem.
Yeah. The 5 things versus one, I think is a primary, that's why we're bringing in culture, far as how we go about handling this aging process. So as we begin to age, there are some truisms, right, Charles? There's some truisms that things are going to change. One of the things that changed in theory is your libido. But I'm here to tell you the libido changing within men are primarily something within the United States that is focused on. So when you go out to different countries, last week we talked about travel, you don't see the same call to arms for men because of libido change. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a part of the evolution process. Like you said, it's natural, and like Ivory was saying, it's doing the work
Mhm.
and understanding that the change is imminent.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. So
Yeah.
what lifestyle choices do you need to adjust? So are you eating improperly? Are you drinking
Yeah.
too much alcohol? But these are also changes that needs to be synchronized with the changes that happens as you age.
Yeah. So let's look at it from that standpoint. Where are some of the things that an individual can do? And like I said, I'm wearing a couple different hats today. So one, if I'm wearing my therapist hat today, 1, exercise, 2, change of diets, let go of processed foods, 3, have a set schedule of sleeping, 4, ensure that when you are in the mood for sex, you're asking your partner for that rather than going to porn. And 5, limit the amount of access you have to things that take away your pleasure, whether we're talking about scrolling, whether we're talking about eating foods and things of that. So if we're talking about that 1 versus 5, Ivra, so we're also talking about 20% of men have physical ED, right? Physical ED is a thing. We're talking about high blood pressure, which also we talking about diabetes. We're talking about some type of medical intervention that is associated with it. That's physical ED, right? That other 80% or 80, that other 80% is all about that one pill and most likely about shame. So before we, talk about the language, Ivor, what did you have to offer to that?
No, I believe that just for me, the healthy lifestyle is so important. And if you are committed to, finding health,
Mhm.
then you will easily find the other things that make your life pleasurable.
Yeah.
I think it starts foundationally with eating and understanding that the things that you put in your body will manifest in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Whether it be a weight gain or a healthy lifestyle or energy or whatever the case may be, there's either going to be a good or a bad result from everything that we consume.
Yeah. And I think that what's ED versus what's not ED is very important because let's be real, your amount of movement changes as you get older, right? So peak testosterone levels in your 20s, 25, right? I, just to be a little bit more transparent, let me go ahead and put on the Eric hat. I went through a trial of testosterone replacement. Now, at the time, my testosterone wasn't low. And just to be honest, I went through it because my practice, I was looking to, because I do work with men and I do, treat primarily men. I was thinking about bringing that, right, that testosterone replacement to our practice. And so I choose to, if I'm going to bring something forward, I choose to experience it. So I did experience it. And I did see a jump in my testosterone, but I also saw a jump in the amount of movement that I took during the time of taking that testosterone replacement. What's your thoughts on that, Charles?
I think it's commendable. That's something that they do in corrections. So they put stun gun jackets on the officers. You have to get maced in order to mace and use the stun gun vest. But as that relates to what you were saying as far as what you wanted to incorporate into the practice. But as far as it's this topic is so strong and so many layers.
Yeah.
That it can be a very long conversation.
I'm gonna bail you out.
That's real though. The layers. I think that's a very poignant topic or point in that it is layered. Like, it is not just one piece. There are so many pieces to this puzzle that will get you the understanding that you desire, if you so desire to even, because a lot of folks will just be like, all right, well, I'm taking Viagra and I'm
right. I'm gonna take Cialis. I'm gonna take Viagra. I'm good. I'm gonna take the Rhino pill at the but
I get the results I want.
Right.
I'm straight.
All I'm doing, because what you really want to do is perform enough so that individual that you're performing with don't leave you. Right. So now we're talking about abandonment. So let's peel back another layer on this concept of masculinity and silence. So if we are viewed as less masculine, that goes along with shame. And so when we have that shame, boys are taught, don't be needy, be strong, don't talk about your feelings. If we are continuing, now, once again, I'm 50. If we're still teaching our sons to be quiet and not appear needy, then somebody didn't get the memo. What are we doing?
Right.
What are we doing, Ivra?
I mean, you in the notes here, we have perform rather than express.
Right.
And that, I had to underline that a couple of different times, because when we have this vision of some amazing sexual, conqueror.
Yeah.
That does
the
everything.
Mandingo is what
that does everything well, right?
Yeah.
When in reality, that's not what it should be.
Yeah.
And it doesn't do much for folks when you're trying to be something they're not, instead of being what's going to make you happy.
Also, being Black, it's the theory that you're supposed to be more well endowed than none. So a person that don't have that DNA can't be a Mandingo. So what are we telling adult men? Because there are adult men that may not have the the length of equipment, and we are telling people that all you got to do is perform. If your partner is okay, then you're going to be okay, which means we're also seeing an increase in the amount of plastic surgery of lengthening of the male unit. So
I'm wide. So wide is okay, everybody.
but that's true though, bro.
Yeah,
let's be real.
Yeah.
So if we look at this from a real, like, you're spending money on the blue pill, right? You're spending money. Let's be real. You're spending money on plastic surgery. You're tying. There's a whole YouTube channel. Okay, if we're talking about shame, masculinity, and we're talking about pleasuring somebody, they're literally tying barbells to their penis to elongate their penis.
I think, man, realistically, we need to have more conversations with our partners about what's the realities, right? Like, let's talk about what's real and what's fiction. And I think when you can identify and understand those things that are real, then you can eliminate those things that are fiction.
Now, mind you, we're not just talking about heterosexual, right? There's also the study also found that gay men also don't receive the same pleasure the heterosexual men, because they're also feeling shameful because one, they're gay, and secondly, they're still not getting the type of sex that they need, even from the person that they assume it, should know exactly the same. So when you're working with someone, right, you've been in mental health for how long? How long have you been?
13 and a half years.
13 and a half years. When you're working with men and you see a man whose literal masculinity is connected to their sexual appetite, what are some things that are red flags within you that you want to tell them, right? And how do you help them with that?
And so for me, masculinity is subjective.
Right.
So that person's masculinity may be based on that, and not taking away from that, but bringing an outside or broader perspective of masculinity.
Right.
Is my
right.
That's usually my lane,
right.
what I do, and how I try to encourage people that I meet who are very different than I am, not narrow or less, but also listening to that other person and what the reason why they are the way they are, because I can learn something as well.
Yeah.
Masculinity is subjective. That's a bar.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like we look at TV and we see, Thor.
Right.
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 We think that's masculine.
That's right.
But being able to have a conversation with your wife, right? That's masculine.
That's masculine. To have a conversation, right? Have an honest conversation with your partner about the things that you keep shadowed about what you need them to do. Yeah, go ahead.
And then you spoke about the taboo of homosexuality. That saddens me.
Yeah.
Because not only do they have the weight of society thinking that they're bad, and religion thinking that they're bad.
Right.
They have internalized that guilt. I grew up going to Catholic school.
Right.
So I understand guilt.
Yeah.
Right. I understand what that means.
I get it.
But
deeper.
It's deep. And it's sad that, that we have, and that's why when that conversation comes up, I'm like, y'all need to pump the brakes, because you don't know what that is,
right,
to live that life.
And so let's go on to religion, because Charles, you said this thing is layered, and it is. We're not in this hour going to solve any one person's, but what we are going to do is peel back these layers. Let's go to that religion, right? Because depending on how you are socialized to sex dictates how you create your sex map. Eric, what's your sex map? Your sex map is how you have been socialized to find the pleasure of sex. So there's something called a love map, and there's something called a sex map. And in your sex map, what you find is sometimes your pleasures, and you also find your kinks, right? And kinks are things that you find pleasure in that is outside the norm, that may be a little bit, different. So we're talking about BDSM, right? We're talking about things that at times are less masculine, right? And what I've recognized in working with clients, what I find out are most powerful men, the only time they allow themselves to be submissive and surrender is during sex. And that is usually based on how they're socialized to sex and their religious connection. So let's go to the religious standpoint. We're taught as Christians, and also some of the other Abrahamic religion, that purity is the greatest way. And so in that purity, if you go and have the act of sex and you have one pleasure and you also have the sex, you are impure. So you brought up religion. What did you want to add to that, Ivra?
Man, religion can be such a detriment and such a empowering force in our lives. And I think that one of the things that we often forget is that everybody will, as they say, we all have sin. And I think once we are able to move past the shame of being a sinful person or having, doing something that's bad, and understand that everybody's going to do it every day, one thing or another that they do or they think is wrong.
Somebody getting it in.
Move beyond that and get to a point where you you have your rectification and your confession with your God in your way, but move your body in a way that's helpful for you and healthy.
Yeah. Toxic shame is a thing, and it shows up in counseling. You work as a part of the correction, right, Charles?
I have. Yes.
You have, right. This idea of toxic shame as it relates to how we view pleasure. What is your experience in working with people who you can tell have a level of toxic shame, not simply about sex, but also about their masculinity, and how, if it doesn't fit, how society views them as male or as masculine?
It's a mask.
Mm-hmm.
I say that to not be a hypocrite, but people
mm-hmm.
put on masks to mask themselves or intertwine themselves with the way people are moving. So it goes back to the simp when you said that's the term. And so the less comfortable I am in myself, the more I'm listening to what is being the noise on the outside. And that is shaping or modifying the way I'm moving.
Yeah.
And so it ultimately creates an issue. But I see that people who want to learn, I've seen people who want to learn, who want to listen around certain sections.
Yeah.
They listen and learn and less because they want to fit into that section of life. Whatever of life. Whatever they're trying to fit into.
Let's stay under this umbrella of shame. So we know that social media and porn amplifies this, this loop of shame by pushing the concept of conquest-driven narrative and performance anxiety. So one, if you're not getting the likes or the models or, the DMs from the people, there's something wrong with you and you need to do better. And so you need to be more showing, more outward. And if you're not, take this pill. If you're not, do these steps to get more women. What's your thoughts on that one?
Sir, our society is broken. We have too many Kevin Samuels types of teachers that people are listening to. We don't have enough teachers who are teaching holistic growth.
Yeah.
And so you get that machismo Kevin Samuels type dude who's but they get the followers.
Yeah.
They get the followers and you have so many young men that are going down the wrong path because it's comfortable.
Yeah.
And it's, it centers them. You can be centered, but not be the center of the universe.
Yeah. I don't find anything wrong with porn. What I do find what's wrong with porn is how quickly we can find it and how lopsided it is. Right. So back in the day, I had the Hill Brothers. Shout out to the Hill Brothers. And the Hill Brothers had a cassette that was up underneath the bed of their parents. And so when their parents left, we popped the cassette in, right, and watched the porn. Now it's so accessible and it's vastly different than it was before. Not saying it was ethical back then, right? But nowadays it literally promotes the concept of performance without someone actually realizing the thing that you see on social media or the porn is not reality. You think they've performed for an hour. That male has performed for an hour. That's broken up slots that they then brought together and edited. So this idea that the message is one, in order for you, or the shame loop, in order for you to get the pleasure that you need to be like this, or you need to take this pill.
I don't tend to find a lot of things I don't find right or wrong. My thought is that as humans, as Christians, or whatever you believe in, you'll have to rectify. There will be a time for you to stand, to be accountable for what you say and do.
Yeah.
And so I think that's another thing that our society could do a better job of, is understanding and allowing people to live as who they are. Live as that person that you are. Live as the person that God created you to be. And I have to find a way to be okay with it.
Yeah. Let's round this. Let's peel back another. So what does this all mean in relationships? What we're finding, whether I am a mental health professional or whether I am just another guy just walking around talking to folks, what I'm finding is men are becoming more silent. In other words, men are falling into the stereotype that men don't talk for the sole purpose of two. One, not to be emotionally harmed, right? Or socially harmed. And two, that's what we're taught to do. Now, what does that do for relationships? If anyone has pulled up anything on social media over the past 20 years, and this is even before the balloon pop game, this idea of what a man wants and what it takes to make a good relationship has, been a part of our dialogue for generations, right? Because we're seeing the breaking down of relationships. What we are seeing is the increase in the awareness of relationships, but men are not talking to allow that relationship to be transparent and genuine. What you got on that, Ivra?
I would love to see a t-shirt go viral that has the phrase, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, cause
yeah.
Even if we saw that more and we really absorbed that, I think we could be better, because that's where it starts.
Come back to the mic.
Also,
go ahead.
What's very key for me is understanding that when I talk to my partner and we have a discussion, circumstances won't change based on that conversation. There will be a process. So for me, being masculine is having patience and allowing her to develop.
Yeah.
And
because she's your partner. Once again, male or female or whatever. Your partner is not responsible for knowing your likes and your dislikes sexually. So we go back to this concept of silence. So a lack of sexual conversation breeds resentment, assumptions, and emotional distance. And so men, what we're just doing, we're just not talking, and we're going to go get the side piece next door, or we're going to do this, with this person next door, and we're going to communicate with this person because we already got this. And so we're going to go over here and get that. And we're going to get that because that woman or that partner has already invited the sexual energy that they have. And so you're aligning with that, and you're saying, oh yeah, this person gets me. But after a while, it just goes back to performance as well.
Yeah. And I can't let my wife know that I like to be tickled or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, come on.
That's
man.
my kink. Right. That's the kink. So if we go back to this idea of kinks are embarrassing and shameful, right? They just are, and that's why they call them kinks. And so if we're not talking, and we're going back to relationships, if you are in a relationship and you're committing to that individual and you're not utilizing your words on that individual, you're simply putting yourself in prison because you're choosing not to use your words for pleasure. What you got, Charles?
Are you masculine enough internally? Are you comfortable with yourself enough to let your partner know what you want?
So I'm gonna take a quick break. On the other side, we're gonna talk about the intrapersonal relationship you have with yourself and how that actually work in your identification of sex. So in other words, when we talk about masturbation, and I don't even know if I can say that, but they back there listen. I don't know if I can say that on the radio, but when we talk about self-pleasure, there you
Pleasing
go.
yourself. When
you talk about self-pleasure, it's literally about your relationship with you. And so if we're going to talk about self-pleasure, we can't use porn. We can't use some of these mechanisms that just gets you quicker to the end result. So we're going to go ahead and just do a quick break. And on the other side, we're going to jump right back into that because it's going to be real quick. We're going to be real quick. All right. This is Unapologetic with Eric King on WOVU 95.9 FM. Welcome back. Unapologetic. We are talking about men and sex and asking for the pleasure that they want. So on the other side, I spoke about self-pleasure and the value of self-pleasure and what to use and what not to use with self-pleasure. So what not to use? Porn. What to use? Self-awareness. And how do we become self-aware? We improve the relationship we have with ourselves. So that means your interpersonal relationships, and I think I said that right, intrapersonal relationships, there you go, is what we really need to talk about. So in order for you, and I don't know who want to jump in on this, in order for you to please or to educate someone on pleasing you, you must understand how to please yourself. But if you are 30, 40, 50, and you have not yet understood how to please you, we got a problem, Ivra.
Yes. In order for me to be honest with anybody else, I've got to be honest with myself first.
Right.
And that's be honest with me.
Yeah. But
hey, that's it. Oh, you like?
I thought you.
That's it.
So, so what do I mean by education? So, first and foremost, in order for you to educate your partner on your needs, you first have to go through the levels of education. So, one, education, you only get it 3 ways, right? You only learn some 3 ways, right? Or get educated 3 ways. 1 is you absorb it by some means. 2 is the model. 3 is the trial and error, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times the model that we actually get, because it's against society's norms to watch someone have sex, is porn, right? Yeah. No, that's where I say, if we're talking about this concept of self-pleasure and porn, there's a part of this where the pre-education has to happen. That means us as men have to have a better conversation with our male underlings about sex that has nothing to do about performance. You want to jump in on that one?
I think if letting folks know and understanding that the trial and error aspect can be the best way to learn in this scenario specifically, right? Because you ain't always going to do it right.
Right. And
so it's going to be fun to try.
So wait, we got literacy means to absorb the knowledge or get the knowledge, right? There's a thing called emotional literacy, and that's knowing what you want, feeling safe at it, and navigating the responses. So Charles, what you got on that?
For me, it goes back to what you said, our wants versus our needs.
Got you.
And we want to watch porn to fulfill this desire, but what we need to do is have a discussion with our partner to build up that desire and also fulfill the want. Yeah. So instead of taking that easy road that gets us straight to the point, taking the more detailed, complex road, which is that's why we're having this conversation.
I need y'all to know that sex is let's see if I get this right. Sex is 50% mental, 50% spiritual, 25% spiritual, and the rest of that is physical. But too often we're bringing the physical aspect in without understanding the spiritual aspect. And if we talk about the spiritual aspect or even the mental aspect or whatever have you, let's talk about trauma. In most cases, men are socialized with their first sexual partners with an older relative or an older individual, which means our sex map is created by individuals who are predatory at best. And it may not be predatory, right? That older sibling can be 1 or 2 years older. I mean, that older, relative could be 1 or 2 years older than you. And they're also trying to experiment. Yeah. Exactly. And so what happens in that exploration period, because we are relative, we can't go and talk to our peoples about this. So any thoughts on that?
That one caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting that, honestly.
But it's real.
But it is real. And when you think about it, that is also the cause of a lot of the other traumas that we have in our lives.
Exactly.
But man, that was a heavy one.
But no, for real. In most cases, your sex map for men are generated through the teachings, the trial and error of the people you have around you. And also, let's be real, in families, there are predatory aspects. There are so many men that have come to see me that were raped by older women, whether they're a part of their family or not, but they were within the community. Yeah. What's funny is that I recently looked at, Boomerang. I don't know if you guys watched this movie.
Yeah,
I love that movie,
long
right?
time ago.
If we look at the three characters, right? One, you know, you got Marcus, the dude. Next, you got the three women. You know, we got Strange, we got Angela, who is played by Halle Berry, and then we have whoever the what's the name's ex-wife.
I can't remember.
I can't think. Somebody gonna. So I looked at the movie and I said, okay, who's the real villain? The real villain was Eartha Kitt's character. Now I did some research on that. Eartha Kitt, who played Lady Eloise, right? She didn't want to play that part, and a lot of her parts were cut out because of the predatory nature. Because Lady Eloise was older than Marcus, and Marcus, right, was the up and coming sexual entity within the company. And so she utilized her position to have sex with him.
Mm-hmm.
She's the real. But in the end, what I said in my post is we'll marry Angela. We'll want the dog of whatever the Robin Gibbons character's name is, but we'll move towards Strange because she has the sexual energy that, or the sexual energy that we want as men. And so looking at the women that we position in our life, it goes just like that. And thanks, Joy, which is a woman in my life, my wife, for giving me Robin Givens. So Angela was the safe one. Robin Givens was the driven one. And Strange was the sexual energy, animalistic energy that we all want in our partners. You watch that movie, right? Because I'm around that age where that movie helped contribute to my love map or what I wanted in a relationship. You get a lot more nuggets.
Great movie too.
Right, it's a great movie. What you got?
So I just looked up on IMDb to see the characters, and that the cast on that movie is amazing.
Is it? Yeah.
But for me, it was I learned the older woman aspect of it. And I used to make a joke that every young man needs an older woman to teach him the right and the wrong. If it's a healthier environment, please, by all means, do what you do. But
oh God,
I'm sorry.
We got 5 minutes before we gotta get.
But so that dynamic is. I think being aware of the dynamic that we are entering into is important, and understanding what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's how we can keep ourselves from going down.
If you watch the movie, it's one of the most paramount movies, and Eddie Murphy got so if I look at the Eddie Murphy character, and I'm gonna equate this to men and masculinity, right? And I'm gonna go back to it, but we got to close. I'm gonna relate to this. If you look at Eddie Murphy in that movie, or Marcus in that movie, he was effervescent. He was there, right? Unfortunately, he was just like every other male. He put his being and his creativity in his sexual pleasures, and when he got connected to someone who he deemed as perfect, if you notice, he lost his flow, he lost his energy, and he began to go downhill. And that happens with a lot of men, right? And
that's when he performed.
That's when he performed the worst. And if anyone pays attention to chakras, so all of the male chakras are odd, right? The odd number. So the first one, which is the grounding chakra, the second one, which is the solar plex, which is the third chakra, the fifth one, which is the throat, and the seventh one, which is your connection to God. Every masculine chakra, when we're in our masculine chakra or visible in that masculine chakra, in this day and age, is viewed as toxic. If a man is confident, right, within that third chakra, they are being arrogant. If they're grounded and unwavering, they're stubborn. If they're connected to God and view their self in their God body, they are out of touch. If they're speaking in a way to people in an authoritative standpoint, they are problematic. So if we're going to talk about men and visibility, let's talk about it. So let's close out with this. We need to be more visible in dialoguing in a way that is for us. And so let's close out this segment. What I want from each individual is, what do you want to offer the males that are listening right now? So I'm gonna go ahead and give it to Ivra.
I think that if we are truthfully moving towards improving ourselves, then we have to not be concerned with what people think about how we're moving.
Okay. What about you,
I
Charles?
want to say there's a lot of fruit and vegetables that you were giving out in this conversation. And mostly you said the physical, the sexual part is such a small percentage. So to tie it all in, if we have the conversation with our partner, it will have an enormous effect on the whole scheme of the program, and aligning us spiritually, bringing up trauma, what ways to not touch me, which ways to touch me. So just having a discussion.
And also what I want you to do is men, join men's group that are literally about the exploration and talking about the emoting half of you. Don't join a men's group that just want to talk in a spiritual level. Don't do that, especially from a Christian level. I'm a Christian and I understand it, but there are times when we get into these Christian men's group where we're not talking about the whole person, the mind, body, and spirit. I also implore men to have better conversations with each other and be more vulnerable. That's what I got. So next week, we got the wrap up. Ivra, as usual, I appreciate you, man.
Yes, sir.
Charles, man, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming through.
Yes, sir.
Once again, I implore everybody to go to our YouTube page and, go to Unapologetic with Eric King and, get educated. Remember, I am a therapist. I am not a radio personality. I do this as my therapy. So I'll catch you next week where we're going to bring in Sister Hill and we're going to do a wrap up. I appreciate everybody for listening. This is Unapologetic on WOVU 95.9 FM.